Hello everyone, Osei here again, and in today's tutorials we learn all about these functions: the if function, the SUMIF, the AVERAGEIF, the COUNTIF, the AND, and also the OR functions. What do these functions do? Well, seeing is believing, right? So let's delve right into the action. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment behind to let me know what you think. Let's enjoy the ride together. And so here we have this data we will use as an example for today's tutorials: the name, the sex, the subject, and score of some students. So let's see here, we would like to know the students whose score falls below or is equal to this score 50 here. Well, we can go through since the data is a few, but how about if they are plenty? So here we can use the if function to give a condition. So how do we do that? So as usual, we'll begin with the equal sign, and we'll type the if function, hit the tab key to select it, and it is asking for the logical test. So the logical test we want to find the subjects or the scores of the subjects which are less or equal to 50. So simply select this score over here, so we'll reference it, and what we want is if it is less than or equal to the score 50 here, so we'll simply select the score 50, and we would like to make it an absolute reference, so we'll simply lock it with the F4 key. Then we'll bring in the comma sign, and if it is true, what do we want to return? So if it is true, simply let's say fail. And also, anytime you want to type a test in a formula, you always have to put it in a double quote, just as I have done. And if it is false, so if this condition is not met, what do we want to return? So if they don't fall within this context, then we would like to return good. So let's simply hit enter and see what will happen. So we simply hit enter. So it means Mark, his score is above the 50 mark. So let's simply drag it down to see what it seems. There is one student who failed. Who is that? Rose. So it means Rose is scoring less than or equal to this 50 mark. How about if we are to change the score of Mark to, let's say, 45 and hit enter? Then it simply applies. So this is how the if condition appears. And so you can apply this to your company if you want to see the number of employees who aren't really performing or coming to work on time. Then the next function we would like to tackle here will be the SUMIF function. And so, like the name suggests, we would like to sum some numbers in the case that a condition is met. So let's say here we want to sum these whole scores. So bring in the equal to, let's type in the sum function, hit the enter, and let's select all this range and hit enter. So here it has given us the sum of all these. And how about if we want to sum the total score of a specific subject and not the entire subject? Well, in comes the SUMIF function. So here we'll select the cell under it, bring in the SUMIF function as usual. So we'll bring in the equal sign, we type the SUMIF, hit the tab key. Then it is asking us for the range. So our range will be our subject since we want to pull out just a single subject from it. So we'll simply select the entire range. We'll bring in the comma sign. And what's our criteria? The criteria we want is if the subject is mass. So we'll select or we'll reference this cell. We can type the math in using the double quote and type in the math. Then after selecting the criteria, we'll bring in the comma sign. So now, after meeting all this, what do we want to sum? Is the scores we want. So we'll simply select the entire scores. Then we'll close our parenthesis and simply hit enter. So now, if we have to carefully go through and add it one by one, we can see that the scores for maths, or the total scores for maths, is 135. How about if we have to change this criteria here to, let's say, English? So let's type in English and hit enter. Then it gives us the total score for only subjects which are English. So now let's undo it and we'll get our scores. So this is how we use the SUMIF function. I hope you're enjoying the ride so far. Kindly hit the like and subscribe button if you are following. And if you are not, leave a comment behind to let me know where you got lost. The next function we would like to tackle now will be the average if. And also, like the name suggests, average if. So we are averaging if a condition is met. So here also, we want to find the average of the subjects which are English. So we'll simply bring in the equal to as usual, our almighty equal to. Then let's type in the average. Let's type in the average if function. Oops, I'm getting it all wrong. So let me select the average if, hit the tab key, and also just like the SUMIF function, the average if provides the same conditions. So now the range, as usual, the range will be the subject, right? Let's bring in the comma sign. The criteria is, let's select or let's reference our criteria. Let's close all and let's bring in a comma sign. Then what are we averaging? We are averaging the score. So we'll simply select our entire score, close our parenthesis, and simply hit the enter. Then voila, it will average it for us. Then comes the question, in the case that our scores change, does it affect our average? Of course it does. So in the case that, let's say, Mark for his English subject, he scored a 70% rather than a 45, then the average simply changes for this. So don't worry, we can simply reduce the number of decimal points for this. Let's simply get rid of all the decimal points. So now we've averaged if this condition is met. And here also, in the case that the subject is to change to, let's say, social, we'll hit enter, then the average changes. And so now moving on, the next function we'd like to tackle is the COUNTIF function. And here also, we would like to count if certain criteria is met. So here we'll bring in the COUNTIF function. We'll type it as usual by introducing the equal sign first. Let's select the COUNTIF function. You can see other functions here as well. Let's simply hit the tab key. Then our COUNTIF function will be selected. And here also, it is asking us for the range. So here we want to count the number of females in our class. So let's simply select the sex since that's where we can find that. So we'll simply select the entire sex. But in the case that the data set goes on, and you can't simply drag it, you can simply use the shortcut by selecting the first cell and using the shortcut Control Shift down to select the entire data set. So here we'll bring in a comma sign, and our criteria is this female here. So we'll simply reference it. Let's close our parentheses as usual and hit enter and see. So now in our class, we have 4 female. If we are to go through this data, we can see that indeed it is true. In the case we are to simply place stubborn and change the sex of Micah to, let's say, a male and hit enter, it affects our entire data set. Well, that's it with referencing. It's all good if you know how to reference. So now let's take back to our data. So our females are 4. Let's change our reference to, let's say, male and hit enter. Well, then it returns 3, signaling that our males are only 3. The last but one function we will tackle today will be the end function. The end function returns a value or a test in case 2 criteria or 2 conditions are met. So how? Well, as usual, seeing is believing. So simply introduce our end function, simply hit the tab key, and now it is asking us for the logical. So what do we want to return, or what do we want to know? We want to know if 2 students we select are indeed females. So the first logical is we'll simply select the sex of Mark and let's equate it to our criteria or to our reference. So we'll simply reference it and we'll bring in the comma sign. And the next logical test we want to see is if Sina is also a female. So we'll simply equate it to the criteria and let's close our parentheses and see and hit enter. So it means no, 1 is not a female. But how about if we are to change the sex of Mark again to, let's say, a female and hit enter? Then it means the criteria is met. So in the case you want to see in your company or class that an employee or a student's performance is being consistent, you can use the end function to do that. And also note, you can use the end function in conjunction with the if function also to return a value. How do we do that? So let's simply give a quick example here. So let's bring in the equal sign and let's introduce the if function. If, and let's now introduce the end function here and hit the tab key. So I want to return a criteria that if, and this is equal to, let's say, smart. If this subject I've selected here is equal to a math, let me introduce another criteria or another logical test. And now if this also is equal to this very criteria over here, let me close my parenthesis for the end function. And now let me bring in the comma sign. If it is true, I want to sum, okay? I want to sum the numbers here, okay? And if not, let me just bring in the blanks to end my if function and let me hit enter. As you can see, nothing appears over here. In the case I was to change this blank to, let's say, 0 and hit enter, then it returns 0. Why is it so? It is so because one of the subjects isn't meeting this criteria over here. In the case I'm to change this to, let's say, maths and hit enter, then it returns a value for me because they both meet the criteria. So this is how you can use the if and the and function together also. The last conditional function we'll be tackling today will be the or function. And so if the end function requires two conditions to be met before it returns a value or a test we want, then the or function just requires one. Seeing is believing again, right? So here, with the cell selected, I want to find out if one or two of the subjects I'm about selecting meets the criteria I want or not. So I'll simply introduce the or function as usual. I'll select it. So the logical. So let me first select this and equate it to this criteria. Let me bring in the comma sign and introduce the next logical test. So if this subject also is equal to my criteria, let me close the parenthesis to see what has happened. Well, it is false because none of these subjects is what is English. How about if I'm to change this to, let's say, English and hit the enter key, then it is true because one of the conditions has been met. So this is the disparity between, or this is the difference between the and the or function. Well, that does it for today. I hope this video has been helpful to your journey in learning Microsoft Excel. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and please be sure to subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for your time, and until then, see you again in my next video where we talk about the lookup functions.